Welcome to Lazio Lounge, the one and only Lazio podcast in English, brought to you every week with co-hosts Vittorio Campanile and Alison McKenzie. You can listen and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify and Spreaker. Please remember to rate and review the show. You can also support our show on our Patreon page, patreon.com/Lazio Lounge. Membership starts at just $2 a month and you will help us improving our show. And now it's time to talk about Lazio. Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Lazio Lounge. Finally, three very important points for Lazio. Alison McKenzie, big victory against Fiorentina. It was a very important match for Simone Inzaghi's side after the defeat in Glasgow against Celtics, after the draw against Atalanta. But first, Alison, please let me wish to Ralph Spinelli, one of our fans from Lazio Toronto, that is not well. He's in the hospital. We hope you have a speedy recovery and come back to watch our show as soon as possible. Thanks, Ralph. And Alistair, let's talk about Lazio-Fiorentina. Fiorentina-Lazio, to be honest. What a match. What's your first thoughts about this performance?
I think relief, but to be honest, I think the emotion that came before the relief was just the surprise, because it's one of these things where we've almost come to expect something else to happen in these moments by now. Like you already mentioned the Celtic game there just a few days earlier, and that was the third time this season that Lazio have gone 1-0 down and then managed to throw that away to lose 2-1. So as soon as Fiorentina got themselves back into that game and in the second half the pressure started to build a bit, I thought that game was probably only going one way. So to win it at the death and then have a chance to make that 3-1 from the penalty spot, which I'm sure we'll get onto, came as a great surprise. And I have to say it's 3 points that will be immensely valuable in the course of the season, and 3 points that totally kind of changes the complexion of things, because it really is amazing to think that after all we've had to complain about this season so far, and there's been a fair bit of it, we're still just 2 points off the Champions League places, which is pretty unbelievable, I think.
Yes, you're right. We're going to talk about the Celtic games later, but I was there and I was thinking, how can it be possible that Lazio is losing this match? We dominated. They didn't have any chance. And if we think about the Fiorentina match, I thought the first 20-25 minutes of the starting 25 first minutes of the match, Lazio was dominating Fiorentina. I think they had just one chance at the beginning, and that was only Lazio. And then suddenly they found the equalizer. And after that, I thought Lazio didn't play as well as before. And in the second half, I thought, well, Lazio's playing still better, but it's not creating that many chances like in the first half. I thought this match would have gone, only one way, or probably or Fiorentina scoring or a draw, because Lazio wasn't getting any dangerous anymore. So I thought that Inzaghi had courage to put in Lukaku. I think we're going to talk about that because, Jordan Lukaku changed the game. I know you don't think it that way, but he had two chances, and from one came the goal, and from the other one came the penalty. So, considering that last time Lukaku played was 10 months ago, it was a risk, but it was worthy.
Definitely, yeah. No, I mean, it was quite funny. I mean, again, the surprise factor, probably Jordan Lukaku's involvement in it anyway was a big part of that surprise, and also the fact that he, like you say, had an impact on the game the way that he did. I didn't think necessarily that he was all that good, to be honest, up until that point. Then again, if you do make a big contribution at crucial moments, then you've done your job. So I think perhaps some people are getting a little bit ahead of themselves, kind of calling for him to be immediately promoted into the first team as a nailed-on starter week in, week out just because of this. Let's not forget Lukaku has dangled good substitute performances in front of us before without actually delivering consistently. But it was definitely a relief to see that not only is he part of this squad again, but he's returned to fitness. He looked in good shape, and he looks like he can contribute this season, which just not something we expected. So yeah, I mean, that has to be, along with everything else that's come out of this game, all the scandal and the referee controversies and all the rest of it. I think the Jordan Lukaku factor has got a little bit lost along the way somewhere, but it definitely is a big talking point. He actually, I meant to say, during the Atalanta game, he was ready to come on at one point. I think it was just before we hit those 2 goals in quick succession. He was stripped off, he was ready, he was on the side of the pitch about to come on, and Simone Inzaghi changed his mind. So we have had a suggestion before now that he is ready to integrate him back in the team. But yeah, like you say, that was the first time we've actually seen him on the pitch.
Yeah, he was coming in against Atalanta. I'm not sure if it was 3-1 or still 3-0 for Atalanta, but yeah, he was warming up, and I thought he could have come in. But Inzaghi risked him yesterday, Sunday against Fiorentina, and I thought he played a very important part. I think we said it often in this podcast. Considering the left position, we know that Johnny can be very dangerous when he's attacking, but we have to talk about this because in Glasgow it wasn't that way. And Lulic, well, we know everything about Lulic, and he's not getting any younger. We all often said that the answer to this problem is Jordan Lukaku, and he showed it yesterday. Obviously, he cannot be, and Inzaghi said it, he's not fit for 90 minutes. He's gonna improve his timeage in the coming matches, so he's gonna be playing more and more and more. But, in those 29 minutes, he was very important because he changed the match. He wasn't tested when he had to defend because I thought Fiorentina didn't attack when Lukaku came in, but I thought he was an important player, and I think if he's fine physically, I think he can be a very good addition for this team. So it would be really, really important to have him back at his form. So we're gonna see. I mean, I don't expect him to start against Torino this Wednesday. I think Inzaghi will go back to his normal formation. I don't know if Lulic will start or Johnny will have another chance. Alistair, what's your thought about that?
About Johnny being picked on Wednesday?
Yeah, who's going to start on that position on Wednesday? Lulic, Johnny, or do you think Lukaku has a chance?
I think he has a chance after that, yeah. I still don't really have much faith in Inzaghi ever not picking Lulic, if you know what I mean. But I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. It makes you wonder, by the end of the season, are we going to end up seeing Rizzo Durmizi come off the bench and make a good impression at some point? There are kind of these people floating around the squad who you can sometimes forget about. Wednesday, I'm not sure. It's a hard one to judge for Inzaghi how he juggles this selection, because obviously there's Torino, who aren't actually having the best season, a bit out of form, and but still a difficult team to beat, no doubt. And Milan, who I was watching against Roma last night, and they're still definitely a work in progress. Not particularly impressive at all, but that's not going to be an easy game against that San Siro, and obviously Pioli's desperate to get his first win. So I would still think that Milan is going to be the game, despite their form, that Inzaghi is going to view as the bigger one, and he's going to want his between the two games, that's the one he's going to want the strongest possible team out for. So yeah, I think Johnny's got a shot. I think Lukaku's got a shot. I don't know. It's quite a hard one to call, to be honest.
Yeah, because let's not forget that Lazio played Saturday against Atalanta, then Thursday Glasgow, Celtics. They came back Friday afternoon, so Inzaghi had really one day to prepare this match that was Sunday. Now Wednesday there's Torino, then Sunday there's again AC Milan away, and then there's Celtic at home. So really Inzaghi has to think about the turnover and change a lot of the players in this coming matches. Now, before going and answer the question, a lot of questions we received today, Alistair, I have to tell you something. We already spoke, and you know my opinion about Danilo Cataldi after the Atalanta performance. I was expecting Danilo to start against Celtic. He didn't. Parolo against start. I thought Parolo had another bad match against Celtic. Sunday against Fiorentina, he didn't start. But the first substitution Inzaghi made was call off Milinkovic Savic, who looked tired. He didn't play that well. And I was thinking, will Berisha come in? Will Cataldi come in? No. Again, Marco Parolo. Are we getting in the same situation of Senad Lulic, that every time Inzaghi has to make a call on that side, Marco Parolo is the first option? I think at the moment he shouldn't be the first option there.
Yeah, well, actually, you mentioned that, and the questions. We did actually get a question on Parolo from Gyozo Potiondi. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. He said, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on Parolo. Way too often I see him being half a step behind the play, giving the ball away easily, losing 1v1 battles more often than not. Should someone else get more playtime instead of him? If so, then who? I think so. To be honest, like you mentioned Danilo Cataldi there, I think he's done enough recently, especially in that Atalanta game, to suggest that he deserves more game time. I think that Valon Berisha at least deserves a fair crack of the whip. This guy, he's not been particularly impressive for Lazio, but then again, he's never been given a run of games. He's never had an opportunity to find his feet, to find his place in that team and get his best form together, as well as obviously his fitness problems he's suffered with as well. So for me, I really do think it's time for these guys to be phased out, and I don't mean phased out in a brutal sense. I mean just being realistic about what they can offer and their advancing years. They still have a lot to offer to this team, as with their experience, with their leadership, but also what they do on the pitch. I thought Lulic actually did quite well defensively against Fiorentina last night. I don't think he had a disaster of a game. But yeah, I think that when there are other options there, you want to see more of them. I wrote a whole article last week basically on the fact that I didn't think Inzaghi was the problem. I didn't think Lazio needed to get rid of their coach, but I did think that it was time for Inzaghi to change the way that he's doing things. Because we spoke about this a little bit after the Atalanta game, how he's just not really willing to try out anything new anymore. He just kind of does the same thing over and over again and waits for different results. And yes, the Fiorentina game was a great result and he deserves credit for that. But I think people are going to get more and more frustrated if he keeps putting faith in some of these veterans who aren't really performing and use that as a stick to beat him with.
Yes, even because Alistair, against Celtic, who had the biggest chance in the last minutes, Danilo Cataldi, who just came in. Every time Danilo plays, he plays well. He gives everything. While I think that Parolo is a little bit struggling at the moment, and as we said before, there are a lot of matches coming in. Lazio have to play a lot of matches in 7 days. So it would be good to give other players an option. Now, against Celtic, when Cataldi came in, there were him and Berisha who was warming up. So, while against Fiorentina, we didn't see Berisha or Cataldi warming up. I didn't like this because it's not that you say, okay, Parolo played bad only in Glasgow. No, he played bad even against Atalanta. So it's the second, and this was the third match in a row. I don't know, how many chances will he have before Inzaghi decide to start someone else?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, you're never going to really know what these guys can offer until you give them a chance as well. Which I think is probably the most disappointing thing about it. And now's the time, there's so many games on at the moment, one every 3 or 4 days. So now is the time really to be giving these guys opportunities. And it's one thing, not wanting to change your team, not wanting to tinker with things if everything's going well. You don't want to upset the apple cart if the results are coming in, the performances are good. And yes, he may have tried to convince us that the game against Celtic was the best Lazio performance of the season, but I don't think anyone was really buying that. And there's no doubt that, I just don't think there's any harm in trying these things. But do you not think, the thing that surprises me as well is that he has shown a willingness to be quite experimental with the defence, but not the midfield. And if you think about what he's done with the back three this season, obviously he's transformed Bastos into a left centre back, and he looks relatively comfortable in that role now. He's now, after starting the season with Vavro on the right, he's now been trying Vavro in the centre. He's been happy to push Acerbi out to the left-hand side and allow Acerbi to get forward more and contribute to the attacking phases. Luis Felipe has been tried on both sides of the defence and in the middle. Inzaghi's showed a willingness to really try out different things and the best possible combinations in that defence, but he's not been nearly as happy to give that a go with his midfield options. It's kind of Lucas, Alberto, Sergei, and Parolo as your backup, and that's it really.
Yeah, which is really weird because, Alistair, we've been talking about this, I think, already last year, saying that Lazio midfielders are able to play in so many different positions. We talked so often about Lulic that can play in a central midfield position. We know that Berisha can play on the left side. Cataldi can play in all the three central positions. Same thing Milinkovic Savic, who could play even trequartista, Luis Alberto, etc. Instead, he's not trying nothing, which is really weird for me. Because, if you remember the first year and a half of Simone Inzaghi, he was experimenting a lot. And now it looks like he's sticking all the time to the same players, which is really concerning. Another thing that I'm really concerned, and I was thinking exactly yesterday during Fiorentina Lazio, is what Johan Karlstein, I hope I pronounce it right, from Sweden, is asking on our Facebook page. Pretty much he's saying what's happening with our set pieces and corners, because the last time Lazio scored with a corner, it was in Coppa Italia, the final, and it was Lucas Leiva who kicked the corner of, obviously, Sergei who scored it. And same thing with the free kick. Lazio is not scoring anymore on free kicks. And, we remember 2 years ago with Luis Alberto, Lazio was scoring so often on a free kick thanks to Luis Alberto. And yesterday, for example, Alistair, he had a very, very dangerous free kick. I think he was in the second half, and he was in the same position where he scored last year against Fiorentina. So, I was really looking forward. And instead, he sent it wide over the bar. I think it was 1 or 2 meters ahead over the bar. He's asking if we are concerned. I definitely are, because in modern football, 55% of the goal comes from a free kick or a corner kick. And so if you don't get those goals, it's going to be difficult to score for Lazio. And I don't remember unbelievable saves from the goalkeeper if we exclude the one against Correa last Sunday against Atalanta from a corner kick. I don't remember Lazio getting very dangerous on a corner kick, and even worse on a free kick. And the question is it Luis Alberto's fault, or there's something that changed from the guys going and trying to get the ball in the box? I think it's pending on the Spaniard, but I'm not 100% convinced. What's your thought about it?
I've got a few thoughts on this, but the first things first. Come on. You're forgetting the most glorious moment of the season came from a corner, which was Bastos' flying thigh volley against Cluj. Also a Lucas Leiva delivery, though, so the point stands about the Coppa Italia final. But yeah, that was probably the only corner goal this season that I can think of anyway. But the thing to think about, I think, with when it comes to the Alberto delivery and, yes, how many assists he got from set pieces in that Champions League race season, the guys who were scoring from those opportunities were Stefan de Vrij, who doesn't play for us anymore, and Bastos, who doesn't play very many games, but like I just said, has already scored from one of those this season. So I think it can be as simple as, yes, the deliveries perhaps haven't been as good, but the people in the box aren't as good at competing in the air to put them away. Bastos has already scored 1 goal from set pieces this season. Acerbi doesn't score goals from set pieces, so he's not good. He's not as good as Stefan de Vrij at doing that. I don't think it really is any more complicated than that necessarily. Perhaps on the training ground they're not paying as much attention to it as they should. But yeah, I mean, you've got to take advantage of the weapons you've got. You look around our defence. Maybe Vavro's one we can try and make more of when he's on the pitch, but again, he's not playing an awful lot of games. But that's been, I think, probably disappointment might be a bit harsh, but it's not really something that Acerbi seems to offer in the way that Stefan de Vrij did, that he's a goal threat from these set pieces. So yeah, I think it's probably a bit unfair, personally, to blame it on Luis Alberto because of the fact that when he was providing, like I say, so many assists, those assists were for players who either aren't playing for the club anymore or who don't play very often. So I don't know. I mean, I think that surely Sergei Milinkovic-Savic has to be a guy that you're making more of from these set-piece opportunities, to be honest, because he's not only a big guy, but he's actually brilliant in the air as well. So I do feel like when we saw that Coppa Italia goal, you did just wonder after watching it, why is this not happening more often? Because it seems such an obvious route to goal for us. And always he's the target for Strakosha to hit. Strakosha's long kicks are always going to Sergei. You know, he's constantly the target man and is viewed in that way, but it is a bit odd that he's not scoring as many goals from these set pieces.
Yeah, it is bizarre, and I think it's something that Inzaghi has to work on and find a solution. I don't think they're not testing nothing in the training, because Inzaghi is smart enough to know how important are set pieces. We have another question from Ben Thomas, who wants to talk about the related off-field issue. You know, what happened at Glasgow. I wouldn't call them Lazio supporters, but you know what I'm talking about. How do you go about improving the image of the club? Ben Thomas is asking. Alistair, what's your thought?
I mean, they've got a hell of a lot of work to do. Obviously, a hell of a lot of work to do in the UK. Some of the coverage of this stuff has been a bit over the top, if I'm totally honest, in terms of the way that the Lazio fan base at large has been attacked and dragged through the mud because of the behaviour of these utter despicable morons going around doing this stuff. And the point seems to be getting missed, which is that the Lazio fan base at large are absolutely infuriated by this, disgusted by it, and probably angrier than anyone, really, because it's their name that gets, like I say, dragged through the mud by these things happening. So talking about improving the image of the club has to be stronger on this. They have to find these guys and get rid of them. You know, and they're talking about taking a zero tolerance attitude on racism, and well, they've got a hell of a lot of work to do with improving the image. I don't think the club does nearly enough out there in terms of its social media presence, its PR presence. You know, there are things going on. There's, you know, in the stadium at the moment, there's big Love Lazio Fight Racism campaign on the ad boards around. Like, I bought my ticket for Torino earlier and it's plastered all over that, but the outside world doesn't see these things, and yet it's not as good a story, so people don't like to see that the fans are fighting against this and the club are fighting against this, but that's not what's going to make the headlines. But I think the club needs to find ways of getting that message out there a bit stronger, that these, like you say, these aren't supporters of the club, these are extremists who have attached themselves to the club, and look, there's an average crowd of about 35,000 people going to Lazio games every week. People responsible for this kind of behaviour number in the hundreds at most, and I'm totally sick of it. You can probably tell. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, even because we already been punished by UEFA for what happened during Lazio Rennes, and Lazio said we already found who these 22 people they said they were, something like that, is, and so we're gonna block them, not allow them to get to the matches anymore. And then someone else pop-ups in Glasgow. I've got the impression that in the past the club didn't do nothing. Now finally they're acting and trying to stop them. So I hope they really do, because again the problem is that the image of Lazio is ruined, not of these idiots, because no one knows who they are, etc. So it's time to act, because already we know that the Curva Nord will be shut down for Lazio Celtic. There's the risk that Lazio will play another time, with a stadium empty, and this doesn't help the team, and it's terrible globally. Lazio hasn't got a sponsor, but I wonder who would put, the name on a shirt with stupid fans like that. So I think Lazio should be doing more on a marketing point of view on social media and things like that, which is not happening yet. But I hope they learn and they're going to do something better.
Yeah, because look, there have been a lot of horrible episodes in Italian football already this season. Lazio haven't really been involved in much of that, but people still see the right messages going out there, even if you think about Roma's English language social media accounts, and they've been guilty of racism twice from their fans already this season. But just the fact that they've been able to respond to that out there in English, saying we're going to find who did this and we're going to get rid of them, it doesn't forgive the Roma fan base the fact that that's been going on, but it does at least show that to the wider audience that they're doing something about it, or at least that they intend to do something about it. And likewise, Inter, absolutely horrific scenes last season, and that Boxing Day game against Napoli, absolutely ridiculous. And I don't think Inter's reputation has been damaged nearly as badly as Lazio's by the group, the extremist wing of their support who have been responsible for these kind of things. And they launched that massive campaign, though, the Brothers Universally United thing, which, whatever your opinion on how successful or sensible that was, it was out there, and they did make a big song and dance of it in a way that Lazio have failed to so far. So,
well, I think the marketing of Lazio is stuck in the 80s. So, yeah, we have to improve our marketing before doing things like that. But yes, definitely Lazio have to do something better to stop this big problem, I would say. But talking instead of other things, Alistair, on Twitter, we have Stefan Scarpulla, but even Alexander Mikkelsen. We're talking about forward, and we're talking in particular about Ciro Immobile. Stefan is asking, how could it be possible with Ciro Immobile fighting for the Capocannonieri title, leave the penalty to Caicedo? Because it looks like Immobile should have taken the penalty, but he said, no, I leave it to Caicedo because he's someone who fights every time, he deserves to score, and so I leave it to Caicedo, and he missed. The funny thing is, after the end of the match, Luis Alberto complained, said, hey, I wanted to kick the penalty, why did you leave it to Luis Alberto, to Caicedo? And then Ciro Immobile, after talking to Lazio Style Channel, said, I feel strange because, I left it to Caicedo because I thought he deserved it, and then Luis Alberto come back complaining that he should have taken. And I think if you're the kicker, you should take the penalty, and that's it. And so, well, this is my opinion. But this proves you, Alistair, how Lazio players are like a big family, right? Because Ciro is a striker, and strikers always want to score. And Sunday he made a amazing assist to Correa and left the penalty to Caicedo. So I think this is a good sign overall.
Yeah, but come on. I mean, it's penalties are not like a gift that you pass around. It's not like you're giving him a Christmas present. Penalties are a technically difficult challenge within the context of a football game. They do get saved and they do get missed, as we know. It's not like you're saying, "Oh well, you've had a good game, go and take the penalty." There's a reason you've got a pecking order of penalty takers. The reason is that some people are better at it than others. And yes, it's the 90 whatever minute, 93rd, 94th minute of this game, and we're already winning. But my God, I mean, once he'd missed that and Fiorentina went back up the other end, I was thinking, I cannot even imagine the fallout if this ends up in a draw after all that. It's just not something to be messed around with. And I was astonished by this, not only because of that, but because of the fact that after the fiasco in Bologna where Correa missed his last-minute penalty and everyone was asking why Correa's taking the penalties, Inzaghi was pretty clear about that and saying our penalty takers are Ciro Immobile, Luis Alberto and Johnny. I mean, he's never even mentioned Caicedo's name, so it's crazy. I mean, I really hope that this doesn't happen again now. We need Immobile taking penalties. He's very good at it, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what context of what game you're in, especially this Lazio team are so volatile, so unpredictable that we really just need our best players to be taking them.
Alexander Mikkelsen, still talking about Ciro Immobile, asked, what happens if Immobile get injured? Who will we look upon to be decisive for us? And not only as a goal scorer, but as a leader in the offense. Well, obviously, what happens to Barcelona if they lose Messi? Or Juventus without Cristiano Ronaldo. We saw Juventus without Cristiano Ronaldo was able to draw against Lecce. So, obviously, if you take off the best player in the team, I think at the moment Ciro Immobile is the best player of this team. Obviously, the team struggled. I think Immobile is perfect for this team. And this team is perfect for Ciro Immobile. So, obviously, without Ciro, it would be really tough for Lazio. We said that a real Vice Immobile is missing in this team, but we saw that with Caicedo, Lazio is playing a little bit different. The problem with Caicedo, Alex, is that he doesn't see the goal like Ciro does. So he's more an assist man than a real striker, and this would be a problem. But let's not think about Immobile getting injured, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's been the position for, 3 years now, has been, well, if Immobile gets injured, we're screwed. And we've kind of known that, and that's why we've been crying out for Vice Immobile to be brought in the transfer window for ever since we started this podcast, I think, Vittorio, we've been talking about that. So, yeah, I think we just have to hope it's not. Another question, Brian O'Donoghue said, on the Celtic game, why do we switch off at the 60-minute mark? We do this a lot in games, even if we're technically better than the opposition and we were better than Celtic, which is something you mentioned, Vittorio, as well. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I thought Celtic is a real... it's a team that is pressing a lot, goes very fast, different speed compared to a lot of Italian football teams, but no offense to you, Arzer, they're not a great football team. So I thought that Lazio, even without...
Hey, I am no Celtic fan, don't worry about it.
I've got the impression that Lazio was controlling the match quite easily. The problem of the 16th minute, I think that the pace of Celtic was creating problem. And again, I go back to Parolo and Lucas Leiva on this occasion because I thought they were struggling a lot because the Celtics players was going like twice the speed of these players, and obviously if you lose the midfield, then you feel a little bit of pressure. But we have to say that this didn't happen only against Celtic. Let's not forget the Spal match. Let's not forget the Cluj match. Lazio at the moment, I think maybe only against Sampdoria, was able to play a 95 minutes at the same level. At the moment, we were able to play like that I don't remember. I think never. And I don't know if the problem is when Inzaghi make a substitution, most of the time who comes in doesn't give or doesn't change the match like Lukaku did. I thought if you exclude Cataldi, in some occasion, the players that came in didn't change the match, didn't help Lazio to get back to playing great football. Instead, the other teams often changing players had an extra boost, and I think that's the reason why. Still, I was there, and when Celtic scored the second goal, by the way, I said to my son they're gonna score on this corner, and I was right. But I was thinking, how the hell did we lose this match? They didn't have a chance. We were controlling the ball and we lost 2-1. This is something I still wonder. I don't understand.
Well, I was kind of left wondering, Brian in his question mentioned switching off at the 60-minute mark. I was wondering about the possibility of this team kind of struggling a little bit with the continued problem, I suppose, of putting games to bed. And it's nothing new. The games in which we've had so many chances, failed to take them, and then all of a sudden the game's hanging in the balance. And we saw that in the Inter match where so many chances. Correa should have had about 4 goals. Samir Handanovic has the game of his life. Then D'Ambrosio scores because of some pretty shoddy marking by Johnny. And in the second half, the team just didn't look like they believed in it at all. They just didn't look like they had any answer to it. And I do wonder, I'm a little bit worried that part of this is the fact that it's happened so often now that they've created enough chances to put games to bed that when they do this and the game still is open, they maybe start to fear that a little bit, that it's going to happen again. And it kind of reminds me of the blackout thing, from a couple of years ago, where after the blackouts, everyone just kept talking about blackouts. And the more you talk about it, almost the more likely it is to happen. Because if people keep talking about blackouts before every Lazio game, once they concede a goal and they're in a difficult position, they'll start thinking, well, let's not have a blackout.
I had the same impression yesterday, Alistair. I don't know if you agree with me. I thought Lazio played a great first half. But in the second half, they were keeping the ball, but not attacking, not creating chances like before. And I thought, I had the impression like Lazio players said, okay, you know what? We keep the 1-1. After all, it's not that bad. We don't have to lose this match. Which was a little bit concerning because I thought Lazio was a better team than Fiorentina. And then Lukaku gave you that boost. It looks like Lukaku was the only one saying, no, we have to try and win it. And that changed the match. I've got the impression that some of the Lazio players have this type of feeling, Okay, 65 minutes, we are 1-1. You know what? Let's take this point home and, maybe we're going to win the next match, which is completely wrong. But that was the impression I had yesterday, After giving everything in the first half, the Lazio players were, let's get this point home. Did you have the same impression?
Yeah, I did feel like they perhaps would have seen it as a good point, and I was starting to wonder myself, is this a good point? And I think it probably is in the kind of context of that match with the Fiorentina's home form that they were in and the form that we were in, especially away from home. That's only the second game we've won away in all competitions this season after the first day against Sampdoria. So I was starting to think that perhaps, we could find positives from taking a point in that game. But, yeah, I don't know. It's definitely got the potential to be a game-changing moment, for Lazio to change the narrative in that way, for it to become a team, now that we're under pressure and they find the answer late on, not only with the goal, but with the penalty as well. They had a chance to win that game comfortably. They stuck in it until the end and got a great result. We should talk about the refereeing decision, Vittorio, because if any Fiorentina fans are listening to this, they'll be furious that we haven't mentioned it by now.
Really?
Marco Guida, what are your thoughts?
I
mean, talk me through the whole thing, because you love your Moviola section of it.
I was trying to avoid it, but hey, I think Guida has a terrible score against Lazio. I think he was the referee in the last derby where Zaniolo nearly tried to kill, who was it, Parolo? And got only the yellow card, where he should have been banned for years after that, what he did. And, well, shall we start from Lazzari? I thought that was a clear penalty. And again, we know that VR comes in only if there's a bad mistake. And I thought that was a terrible mistake. I mean, no doubts about it. That was a penalty and a yellow card from Cáceres. Really, I don't understand how that couldn't be seen by the ref, who was close, he wasn't far away, and why the VR didn't call the ref and say, hey, this is a penalty, come and look at it. And then the second thing was Correa's goal. We're lucky that it is the VAR, because the linesman said it was offside, and the referee obviously trusted the linesman. Correa wasn't even on the same line of the defender. He was 30 centimeters above him. So, it wasn't even close. How can it be possible that he made that mistake? So, we are lucky that VR was there. And then I have to be honest, I thought Lukaku, that was a free kick when Lazio scored the second one. I thought you should have gave that free kick. So the second goal of Lazio should have been not given. But let's not forget there was a clear penalty in the first half. So, probably Lazio would have been 2-0 ahead after 10 minutes. So it would have been a completely different matches. But yeah, Guida was awful. And it's not the first time.
Do you feel better now?
No, I was already better yesterday because surprisingly Sky said exactly the same thing. Said that the penalty was an unbelievable mistake. So I was already fine, thanks.
Okay, one final question I've seen from us on Twitter, Matty Lewis. It's actually a harder one than it might sound. Who do you see as being the best partners for Acerbi in the back three?
Patrick.
Yeah? You changed your mind?
No, I'm joking. And I have to tell you that I was really shocked to see Patrick in the starting 11, and especially in the central defender position, because the question mark was between Luis Felipe and Bastos, I think, playing near Acerbi. And suddenly Patrick comes out and, thinking that on that side there is Ribéry, I was a little bit concerned. We have to say that he wasn't that bad yesterday. And I think Montella helped him, because taking off Ribéry, that I thought it was the best player for Fiorentina. It's another mystery, but you know it. I don't rate Montella great manager, and yesterday he proved it to me. He proved me right. I still think that the best defense for Lazio should be Radu, Acerbi, Luis Felipe, to be honest with you. I didn't like at all Bastos against Celtic. I think one of the reasons why Lazio lost was thanks to Bastos' mistakes. So, I think I was hoping to see...
What happens when you play a striker in defence?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. That makes a ton of sense. But yeah, I really thought Vavro played well against Celtic in that central position, but I thought that Celtic is the perfect team for Vavro, right? They are physical, they try to play high ball, and that's the perfect football for Vavro. But...
Well, that's something I was wanting to ask you about as well. Was I'm actually quite intrigued by it. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's the best combination yet, because I don't think we've seen enough of it yet to know that. But I'm actually quite intrigued by this idea of having Acerbi on the left and Vavro in the middle, because I think that actually might suit both of them quite well. And don't get me wrong, Acerbi's been brilliant in the middle, and I'd be very happy for him to stay there. But in terms of trying to find the best combination of the players that we have, I've not been totally convinced by Stefan Radu so far this season. And Acerbi actually looks really useful out there on the left, and he's got a way of contributing to attacks that Stefan Radu doesn't always manage to do. I mean, Radu does manage to play some useful balls into the box from deeper positions and so on, but I quite like the look of Acerbi, and he almost kind of seems to take people by surprise that he's as good as he is at getting up the line that way. And yeah, I suppose then the question is how well Vavro can adapt to playing in that role in Serie A, like you say, and then the question of who's the best option on the right is still an open one, because I do agree with you. I think Luis Felipe has got the most quality out of all the options that we have there, but he's also he is a frustrating player. He still doesn't seem to be quite making the development, making the growth that we want to see from him. And he is capable of some pretty reckless and poor decision-making at times as well. So, yeah, I think probably what you said is right for the time being, but I am intrigued by this idea of Vavro being in the middle, and we'd quite like to see a bit more of it.
You got it wrong. I'm always right, not only this time. Okay?
Sorry. Please invite me back.
Okay, I will think about it, to be honest. But I think that Acerbi loves to play on that side because he can push, and you can feel that he's a defender who would love to push a little bit more. He's always, you can see it in the final minutes of the match. He's always near the penalty box, and sometimes you look and say, "What the hell is he doing there?" And so, yeah, I think he's pushing Inzaghi to try him in that position. But, yeah, I thought Vavro played well, obviously. As we said, he needs to be tested in a more... in a Serie A match, probably, to be sure. But we saw improvement about Vavro. So, we're going to see what happens. Obviously, he won't be able to play against Wednesday, against Torino. This is embarrassing, I have to say. Basically, he was going out of the pitch, and Fiorentina fans booed Casado, and he simply did the gesture, "I cannot hear you," and I don't know who see him. He got 1 match of suspension, while Ribéry, pushing the linesman, got only 3. I mean, if doing the gesture, "I cannot hear you," gets you 1 match of suspension, pushing the ref should get you... How many did Paulo Di Canio get? 14? Well, I think something like that. So, really, Serie A, it's really embarrassing when it comes to these things.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think they just do it almost at random. They just pick a number out of a box somewhere. That doesn't seem to be much sense, but yeah.
I think we don't have any other question, Alistair. I don't know if you come up with the stats. Did you sign something?
Well, you've just asked me a little bit too early because I was just in the middle of trying to have a bit of a check. But if you can fill, 10 seconds of time, I might find you something.
Well, of course, don't worry about that because, Torino-Lazio, it's a very important match. It's funny that at the beginning of the season, we said that Torino could have fight for the Champions League position, and instead, they went out of the Europe League. They are struggling now, and it's funny because I thought they have a good manager, that is Mazzarri, who doesn't play great football, but usually his team are very solid, have very solid defense. And instead now they're not playing great football, and only thanks to Belotti, who's come back, who's on form, they are still close to the top position. But playing at home against Rome at the Olimpico, I think Lazio has to win this match, even because if you want to fight for the Champions League, you have to start winning matches. And Lazio this year never won more than 1 match. So, we have to, after beating Fiorentina, try to win against Torino, and maybe next Sunday against AC Milan, and finally win a match at San Siro in Serie A against Milan, because 1989 is far way back, and it's time to finish this.
The year I was born. a lot has happened in that time, you know.
Absolutely, I still remember when Lazio scored and won that match. So yeah, it's time to change things. And every year, Alistair, something strange happened in that match, right? There was the handball of Cutrone, strange red card comes to Lazio, Durmisi making stupid penalties. Anything but Lazio not able to win that match is simply unbelievable.
Well, let me just say you've done a great job with your filibuster there, and I've got some stats now. One's very interesting, though. I mean, this does just involve going on to Lazio page because they are excellent. If anybody doesn't already follow them who listens to us, I'd recommend it. They've got lots of great stats about Lazio after every game. But they've said that Lazio is the second highest percentage in Serie A of attacks that go down the left wing, 40%, which is just behind Fiorentina on 41%. But in last place in the whole league for attacks going down the right-hand side with 31%. And Vittorio, that's something you've talked about before, actually. It is. Do you not think it's such a bizarre imbalance in this team that so much is going down the left, and especially now that we've got a player like Lazzari, who's, I think, coming on a bit now as a Lazio player. I felt over the last couple of games, but I feel like we really need to be doing a bit more there. And obviously Alberto plays on the left side of that midfield, and Stefan Radu's over on that left side, who's a more capable ball-playing defender, I suppose, as well, which helps. But it does seem like a bit of an imbalance.
Can I say something? I was in Glasgow watching the match from the stadium, and I think it was different because Lulic wasn't there. I think the influence of Lulic pushed the team to play on that side because Johnny was often free against Celtic, and they didn't pass him the ball. They preferred to go the other way, and that's why Lazzari had a great match. Now, this Sunday, with Lulic back, Lazzari didn't touch the ball that often like on Thursday. So I believe that really it's Lulic commanding a little bit where the ball goes, which is wrong because as I said, Marusic is often very, very free on that side, and still they prefer to go on the opposite side where defenders are there ready for Lazio instead of trying to go on the other side, which is really concerning.
Yeah, well, you think he just shouts at everyone to give him the ball?
I don't know if he's shouting or maybe during the match or maybe before, saying, hey, if you don't pass me the ball, I will tell Inzaghi to not play you next match. I don't know. Could be an option.
Yeah, possibly. Well, a couple more just to finish. Ciro Immobile is the top for goals and goals created this season in the top 5 European leagues. 14 between goals scored and created, ahead of Lewandowski on 13. And the Correa-Immobile partnership, it turns out, are the joint 4th best in all of Europe at the moment as well. They've got 13 goals between the two of them, which is only behind Muriel and Zapata at Atalanta with 14, which is funny because they're not really a partnership. It's usually one or the other. And then Lewandowski and Gnabry at Bayern and Aguero and Sterling at City, and they both have 15. So there you go. There's your stats.
Yeah, not bad. And I think thanks to Atalanta, because Sterling had a hat-trick against Atalanta, otherwise he would have been. And Aguero scored 2. So, 5 of those goals came last Tuesday from Manchester City Atalanta. So
I don't think this includes European games. I don't think so. I think they're just talking about domestic matches. But because otherwise, yeah, they would be running away.
But even though Premier League started earlier, so, they're ahead of Serie A, of
True, yeah.
more matches, right? So, but anyway, it's really interesting. I mean, even more now thinking that if it's solely leagues, then Premier League started like 1 month earlier than Serie A. So this even more credit to our strikers. And I think
Correa's scored 2 goals in 2 games now, so he's obviously listening to the podcast, and when we told him to start putting those chances away, he's decided to do it. So Well done, Tuchel.
Finally, even though he missed a big chance yesterday, but he's excused after scoring it the first time. Alistair, I think we can wrap it up here. Thanks again for joining us. And Wednesday there's a very, very, very important match. Lazio have to continue the winning streak after beating Fiorentina away. Now it's time to win 2 matches in a row. We never did it this year. It's time to do it this season. It's time to do it if you want to fight for the Champions League, because Napoli is struggling. Now Napoli is at 2 points from Lazio. And really, after all the struggling Lazio had this season, we are just 2 points from the Champions League. So let's keep on pushing. Let's try to win 2 matches in a row. And this will help Lazio ambition. Thank you, Alistair. And we're going to talk Thursday.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Lazio Lounge, the podcast in English about La Prima Squadra della Capitale. Remember to rate and review the podcast and follow us on our social account on Facebook at facebook.com/Lazio Lounge and on Twitter at Lazio_Lounge. And if you like the show, rate and review the podcast and tell your friends to give it a go. Thank you, and always Forza Lazio.